Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local. So, have you talked to your clients about your use of AI in any way? I mean, Darren, you're writing review responses, and you're writing content, presumably, that shows up in multiple forms on their GBP or maybe even on their websites. What have you said to your clients, both of you, about like how AI tools are being used?
Yeah, so the clients are asking us about it all the time. They're interested to know, hey, are you guys using AI? How are you using AI? I think one of the big concerns they have is whether or not it might have a negative impact. So they're interested. They want to know, like, is this going to cause us problems down the road? But we are upfront about it. We do definitely tell them. It comes up in our sales calls too. They often ask about it, or we let them know what our processes are, and so we do tell them. And most of our clients are kind of thrilled about it. They're excited about it. They want to talk to us about it and find out what we're doing and how we're using it. And we haven't had any complaints, just that like surface level concern, like, okay, are you sure this is going to be okay? And we think it is going to be okay. We don't think we're doing anything nefarious or potentially damaging to their future rankings, which is what they care about. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest concern people have is like it being overused in content and then that content not performing well in Google.
Yeah.
So we kind of phrase it like we use it like an assistant, right? So yes, our writers use it, but it's to get ideas, not to do the writing. And everything that we post is human edited and isn't going to just, be something a bot spit out and then paste it on your website.
Yeah.
And are your clients at all saying, hey, this is a time-saving thing for you guys, and how's that going to impact our fees or our costs? Have you gotten any questions about that, where people sort of assuming there's greater efficiency now and you don't have to invest as much time? Has that come up in any way?
It hasn't on our end. I mean, it could though, right? But I would say we think it's more of a way to keep costs down, right? Because at the end of the day, it actually could work to their favor if it means that we don't have to raise prices as often because now we're more efficient. So if it does come up, that would kind of be my response. But it hasn't really come up as of yet.
Yeah, and we would have an easy defense for that. We'd be like, dude, we're already the most inexpensive SEO company you've ever met. So it's like we're already serving you great service at the lowest possible price. We want to make it accessible to everybody. So we could easily defend that.
You just said something very interesting, Joy. You talked about your clients having enough sort of sophistication and understanding of Google ranking and search quality to be concerned that if you pushed out AI content without sufficient human intervention, that might cause them to suffer. I mean, can you elaborate on that? Because that seems to me to be a pretty sophisticated question from a client at this point.
Yeah, I mean, our clients, to be honest, are usually somewhat aware of SEO. Like, they're not the average small business owner that like doesn't know how to use a computer or something, right? Like, so I would say that like maybe our clientele is a little above the average when it comes to that. But I do think that it's common knowledge that Google doesn't like crappy, low quality duplicate content. And so far, every conversation I've had with any business owner, that is what they actually expect from AI. It's low quality, crappy duplicate content.
It's interesting that that's sort of already kind of pervasive in the zeitgeist. So, Mike, why don't you? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Joey.
I was just gonna say I kind of agree with their assessment. Like that's basically been my experience too. Like some of the answers I've gotten from content when I tell it to write stuff, it's like it's terrible.
Well, so just a quick anecdote for me, and then Mike, I want to ask you about your review use case that you talked about, where in the Monday newsletter, where you asked a bunch of questions about review volume and star ratings. But so my younger daughter is now a fresh person in college, and when she was writing her essays to apply to different schools, she gave them to me to look at and give her feedback. And, some of her essays were better than others in terms of polish and, coherence. And so I ran them through ChatGPT at the time, and it made them all better. And I thought, this is really scary. I didn't use those ChatGPT versions. I worked with her to improve them in the old fashioned sort of human way. But that was a sort of scary revelatory moment for me. But Mike, talk about that the review use case, because I think that was pretty interesting.
Sure. So I was working with a large multi-location client who had 10 years worth of reviews. I was just shy of 2,000 total reviews. And having worked with GatherUp and worked on the reporting for years, and always frustrated by the fact that in the end, to get some of the questions I would often have answered, I would need to take the programmer away from whatever they're doing and get some SQL query going and whatever. So I took this client's 2,000 reviews, put them in a spreadsheet, dropped them into ChatGPT 4, and asked it to calculate the average review score and totals for each of the locations. And for locations that have lower ratings in the past 12 months than the previous years, show the count of the reviews for previous years and rating averages for the previous years and the rating averages for the past 12 months. And then and then in the same query, it said, if the rating is less than 4.5, how many reviews would that location need to get to 4.5? And then to provide any other insights that might help these locations perform, or which ones are doing well, which ones are doing poorly. And just the ability, for example, to extract this year versus all previous years' averages for 25 locations was significant. But then being able to go in and pull out just the ones that had less than 4.5, how many reviews 5-star reviews they'd need to get over 4.5, and being able to compare last year's performance to all previous years was incredibly insightful. It's the kind of reporting that you would want, but it's very difficult because everybody wants something different from the data. So I see in this that ChatGPT becomes a reporting extension for SaaS tools or whatever other data structure you have at a higher level. But it allowed me as a consultant to go back to the client and say, here are the locations, here's how many reviews they need. And what precipitated it was a conversation in Slack where all these local SEOs were saying, what's the formula to figure out how many reviews I need to get to 4.5 stars? And it's a basic algebra, but I thought, oh, well, doing that on 25 locations would be a lot of work. So that's what got me going on this. And the output was just astounding to both the client and to me. And it was a lot of fun doing it,
I mean, go ahead, Joy.
Oh, if that's the article you're referencing, I did read that article and I thought it was awesome, the table and whatnot. And I agree, we've had that question come up so many times and it's super annoying to calculate. And all the tools I've seen out there too, there's errors with some of them. They don't give you the exact number because they round or something like that. So I think that's a really good use case for it.
Yeah. Also just the last 12 months versus the previous period, right? So you could see which locations amongst many were going up, which were going down, which is hard for, multi-location environment to parse, so it was just, in a little bit of time, got a lot of very interesting data.
That's a super specific use case, and one that I would just not have expected, and a really, really complex set of prompts in there, right? And yes. So are there anything comparable that you guys, Joy and Darren, that you've outlined some high level applications? Is there anything really obscure or specific that you found you can do that kind of was surprising to you with ChatGPT or Bard or anything else like that? Something really sort of weird and unexpected.
Well, I have a great one, and I actually think that Mike's example, that to me is the most powerful thing you can use ChatGPT for. So much better than content. So writing Excel formulas, writing little Python scripts, writing SQL, analyzing data, that for me is where I really think that's a revolution. That's where ChatGPT becomes such a powerful tool. You could move forward in your life never using a calculator, doing long division for the rest of your life, or you could be like, oh, we have this thing called a calculator now, so I'm going to use it. I'm going to make my work much more efficient. I'm going to do things much better. I really feel like ChatGPT gives us that power now. And my example was in preparation for my Local U presentation where I analyzed 1 million businesses, right? I had so many problems with that. And ChatGPT was my best friend through the whole thing, because first I had to import the data into a database, but I had all these problems with new lines. So ChatGPT helped me write a Python script that I could run on the data. And I was like, how do I install Python on my machine? ChatGPT gave me the step-by-step. So I installed Python. I didn't look at the code. I just pasted the code in and pressed run, and it worked. And I was like, thanks, ChatGPT. And then once I had all the data in the database, I had to analyze it. So I'd be like, very similar to Mike. It's like, I want to see, give me this data from the database. Write me a query to do this. And it's like, gives me the query. I just paste it in. Boom, I get the data. I was like, okay, now I want it. So I just write it in my natural language. I just tell ChatGPT what I want. And then ChatGPT gives me the SQL query for it. I paste it into BigQuery, which is where I ended up putting my data. And I got all the answers. It really powers data analysis in a way that we couldn't do before. And as Mike said, you used to have to, pull a developer off of whatever they're working on in order to get that. But you've got a developer right now, and it's $20 a month. It's ChatGPT. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no more lookup tables, no more pivot tables. Oh my God.
Yeah. It's so great.
What about you, Joy? Anything really specific or obscure that you've used these tools for that kind of was a surprise?
No, I wouldn't say any of it's really obscure. One of our biggest use cases for it is like dealing with service area pages or optimizing for near me. Like these are really annoying things where I feel like the bot can do it better than a human, because it's just like, put near me in the sentence and make it sound natural. It's harder to do. Like you have to kind of think, and you're like, it's a weird kind of thing, but it works really well. So we use it a lot for stuff like that. And service area pages, because the content is so similar, let's be honest, it's really the same stuff over and over again. There's no reason to have like a human rewrite all the time. So that's something like if you have a single page that's already been written once, you can kind of repurpose over and over. And, ChatGPT can literally replace cities. You can be like, replace Edmonton with Calgary everywhere it appears and things like that. It's great at stuff like that.
So, Darren, you just referenced you got a developer for $20 a month. So how in ChatGPT, how are you thinking today about staffing or use of freelancers or future hiring? I mean, has this changed your thinking about those issues? Like we can do more with our existing staff, or we don't have to use, as many freelancers or whatever. How has that sort of reshaped, if at all, your thinking about staffing and personnel?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because at the moment I have a really stupid, not very good developer for $20 a month, that if you tell it exactly what you want and how you want it, you can get it, but usually it gets it wrong, and you got to do a lot of hand holding with this developer. So there's no risk of my development team being replaced by ChatGPT. The developers that I have building our software at Whitespark, ChatGPT can't touch them. And maybe in 5 years that'll change. I don't know. But right now it's like, no, ChatGPT is good for these like little one-off tidbitty things that I wouldn't want to bother my developers with. But it can't build me. I can't just say, build me a brand new rank tracking application that does grid ranking. ChatGPT will be like, I don't know. And so it really requires.
Have you tried that?
I will try it right after this call. We'll see how it goes. But I have low expectations. It doesn't. It's good for like if very, very specific tasks. The types of tasks that both Mike and I referenced. So good at that kind of stuff, which I think is a huge benefit to my development team. It allows them to stay focused. It does improve our productivity from a development perspective at Whitespark, because I am not bugging the team with all my stupid ideas all the time. So it's good from that perspective, but no one has any risks of getting fired. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely no one is at risk of getting laid off at my agency at all. I would say though, like in all honesty, it probably is going to decrease slightly, not a huge amount, the amount that we hire in the next few years. Because whatever we're shaving off that's more efficient would have theoretically been people, right? A couple of years ago.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of like a superpower, right? It just extends my limit. I know I need a lookup table. I know it's going to be really problematic, and I think, I can just use ChatGPT instead of struggling through a lookup table and having to reference instructions every 30 seconds.
Well,
So
do you? Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No, I was done.
Well, so in the way that smartphones have kind of gutted people's memories of telephone numbers, right? You just tap the button and you call whomever, and you can't remember the number except for the sort of immediate few numbers of your closest friends and family. I used to have just a ton of numbers memorized, and now I know anybody's number except my wife's, pretty much. Not even my kids. So do you think there's any risk of that de-skilling your workforce? Do you think there's any, by analogy, like the fact that some of these tasks are being turned over to ChatGPT? Do you think that will
When
impact
I was a
people's
boy,
skills?
I had to remember this kind of story. Is that what we're talking about? It's like,
Exactly. Well, I mean, there's an argument that technology creates a sort of dependency, and it de-skills people in a certain way. You can disagree with that, but I mean, is there any risk of that with your staffs becoming too dependent on these tools, not knowing how to do certain things that they might have once been able to do, at the risk of, I don't know, manually, at the risk of sort of oversimplifying?
It's a concern that I've had. I'm not sure if it's true or not, right? Like I haven't really found a way to tell if it's making people dumber or more dependent on them. But I think that's a risk regardless if you're using AI or not, because we rely heavily on processes. And, I've also heard it said, like, if you have people check boxes and go through a list instead of figuring out like how to optimize a page on their own, you're, causing them to think less. And I'm like, yeah, that's true, but you can only do so much to keep consistency, right? When you're trying to keep the quality of work high, you have to have checks and balances in place. I don't really see this as any different than that.
that's a great point. And the best employees are going to ask, why is this checkbox here?
Yes, 100%.
Just like they should continue to ask, why did ChatGPT do it that way, right?
Yeah, I look at it similar to the calculator analogy. And actually, I love that I don't have to store those phone numbers in my brain anymore because I have very limited brain capacity. And so that allows me to have other things in my brain. And I don't have to remember people's phone numbers. And I think the same thing happens. And yes, so different skills, we don't have to really focus on those, but that allows us, like Mike said, it's a superpower, allows us to focus on things that are more valuable. I don't want to have to do long division on paper anymore. I got a calculator for that. And that frees up my time and my mental capacity to do more impactful work.
I went to school right at the end of slide rules, and then we were just transitioning from slide rules to calculators. So
I thought you went to school when the wheel was invented, Mike.
no, slightly after that, but slightly just before calculators.
You know what that is, so
Class of 69. I'm proud of it.
There's that
Good year.
Thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.